All right, everybody. Here we are for episode 90. 90 episodes, Wayne, of our podcast here. How you feeling?
Hey, this is a blast. Our levels fluctuate. Sometimes we get like 7 downloads. Last couple weeks we've been getting in the 40s. So people are listening one way or the other, and I am appreciative of them, as I am of getting to share our thoughts or share my thoughts with you each and every week. Of course,
same here. So last week, Wayne, let's see, you said the Oscars were going to blow your mind, and I said that it needed to be more entertaining. One would argue that we got both of those things, but maybe not how we were expecting it to happen.
Talk about a slap to the face. Just everything, like, God, first of all, I'm ashamed of Will Smith, man. I have lost all respect. Just my thing is, I'm not going to criticize him or belittle or anything. I'm just going to say, Will better not make another damn joke or laugh at another joke about anybody else the rest of his career. Mm-hmm. That's it. Yeah. Sorry.
It's not a good look. Watching, I'm not sure. Did you watch it live?
I did not watch it live.
Okay. So I watched it live, and it was weird at first. It seemed if you watched it live, you probably thought it was a joke, which is how I thought, which I think is what Chris Rock even thought up until it happened. Because otherwise, if he thought he was going to get hit, why would he just stand there and let it? You know what I mean? So I think he thought it was going to be part of a joke thing too.
The fact that Chris Rock just stood there, composed himself. I mean, I just give major props to that.
I give him a lot. Yes, he gets a lot of credit, I think.
And I'm sorry, the joke was nowhere. I don't know. Again, context-wise, with sickness and whatnot, pretty tame in my opinion. It's not like he really attacked anything. He basically said, "Hey, G.I. Jane 2,"
And like my wife said, she's like, "Who?" Like Demi Moore was a badass in that movie. Who would be
exactly? It's not like it was a weak woman movie, it was pretty empowering in my opinion. But and that's why. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think it just and I get everyone's more sensitive now with the anyone's got an illness. Speaking from someone who has 2 illnesses, I did not 2 autoimmune disease, mind you. I did not find it to be super offensive, and I don't think Chris Rock even was relating it to because everyone's saying, "Oh, well, you don't make fun of her alopecia." He didn't make fun of her alopecia. He made fun of her. He didn't even really make fun, like you said. He was just kind of making a comment that she had a shaved head, and therefore she was going to be in G.I. Jane 2.
I think it's a badass recommendation. I would love to see Jada Pinkett as G.I. Jane 2 because she was in The Matrix and she was a badass. She's pretty great in other things, so why not? But anyway.
Exactly.
Pissed
it was just
Licorice Pizza didn't win. Pissed.
Yeah, I know. Same. And you know what? And that's a good thing. I don't want to focus. I don't want this to be the focus of our conversation. It's not. I think both of us are in agreement. What he did was wrong. It shouldn't have happened. I'm not saying his career should be over. He shouldn't be in celebrity jail. It's just one of those things that it's just. I don't want to talk about so much because I'm so tired of the dismay on the social media where it's like Jim Carrey says that it was wrong. Well, what about when Jim Carrey did this? Or Zoe Kravitz said it was wrong. Well, what about Zoe Kravitz when she tweeted this? And it's like everything has to be a whataboutism, and it really is just it's distracting from the purpose, the point of what happened, which is you can't hit somebody on live television and not expect consequences. You can argue that yes, Mel Gibson should also be removed from the Academy. I agree with that. He's done some very heinous things in his time. You could argue that. Someone else, who's accused of things. Go ahead. Sorry, Wayne.
How about the John Wayne and Clint Eastwood stuff when Marlon Brando set up the Native American woman? I forget her name. I apologize. But
yes, but you could argue
they
that
had to hold John Wayne back from assaulting her. It's like
yes, and that was bad too. And people brought that up too, and it's like that was bad as well. But when you do that, you're then limiting how bad this was.
Exactly,
and this was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And if Will Smith hadn't hit him, then people could have. Even though you and I don't find the joke offensive, it's okay that Jada was offended by the joke. She could be offended by it, and she could be upset by it and hurt by it.
And you
But
know what? If she was and verbalized it, I think Chris Rock may have apologized, and it would have been over and done with. But
exactly, and he would apologize on the spot, and that's what I wanted to try. Like, he handled it. Wanda Sykes said he apologized to all of them afterwards, immediately. Where Will Smith did his weird apology during his very strange winning speech, which was just odd to begin with.
The fact that they allowed him to accept the award after that and give it to him, like,
yeah,
I mean, I understand it's all set ahead of time and whatnot, but I'm sorry, I would have pulled an about face and like, we have to rethink this right damn now.
I wouldn't even, they could have given it to him and just did what they did with Hans Zimmer, who wasn't there, and had a Williams sister walk on stage and say, hey, we'll accept this on Will's behalf. And then that's the end of it.
Yeah.
But Will obviously didn't want to miss his moment, as they did ask him to leave according to the Oscars. But again, I don't want to focus on just that. I've tweeted about it. We talked about it. We both disagree with what happened. And, I don't think anything horrible should happen to either one of them. It's just, we're going to have to kind of wade the waters through this. We're not done hearing about it. We're going to hopefully be done talking about it, because I'd like to not really have to bring it up again. But
and let's just stop. Let's stop focusing on this, and let's start focusing about some important things, like what the hell's going on in our own government, and there's still a war going on, and COVID still exists, and
lots of stuff. Now, I do want to, because that whole thing kind of took away from some of the Oscar winners, I did want to kind of mention some people that maybe people forgot actually won Oscars. One, Questlove won an Oscar immediately after this situation, and he got to give a speech, but it was kind of marred by all of this. Riz Ahmed won an Oscar for Best Short Live Action Film. I feel like that kind of just got overglossed. So that's a big deal. A woman won Best Screenwriting, Best Adapted Screenplay, and also she won for Best Picture for Coda, Sean Hayter. So, I mean, there's things that happened during this show. I think they're important. Dune. I thought Dune, almost swept the entire Oscars. So, I mean, as much as everybody was thinking, The Power of the Dog and all these other movies were going to win, at that point, I was, and you, me, and Andy were talking on that night. I was like, why didn't they just give it to Dune? Every time they announced an Oscar, they're just like, here, it's going to go to Dune. I'm like, at least people are going to remember Dune.
I hate saying this, but it reminded me a lot of when that Mad Max movie that I don't like started winning all the I don't want to say minor awards, but for editing and costume and everything. And then when it came to the big ones, never mind.
Right, exactly. And it's kind of like it, because Dune ended up being the biggest winner of the night. It just didn't win any of the main awards.
Remind me, what did Belfast won something, correct?
Best screenplay, best original screenplay for Kenneth Branagh.
That did go to Kenneth Branagh, so he did finally win.
That was the shitty part. It was between him and PTA, and neither one of them had won before. So it was like those were the two that were the front runners for best original screenplay, and it went to Branagh finally after all these years. So
that was a tough one. Because of it being a real life conflict and what the movie's backstory was about. I'm happy about it. I really, really, really wish Licorice Pizza would have won something, because I think we both agree that is one of the best of the year. One of the best that I've seen in the last, the coming of age in its category in a long time. So very, very happy about it. I can't wait to watch it again. So, and that's the last time I'll bring it up. I apologize, guys. Licorice Pizza.
Justice for Licorice Pizza. It's when Andy was on the Oscar episode, we talked about how the Oscars love real life. Yeah. And if you look at it, you get Jessica Chastain for playing Tammy Faye, Will Smith for playing Richard Williams, Belfast, which is based on a true story. The only outlier is Coda, which Coda is based on fiction. It's based off of a foreign film, so it's not, which is based on a book, I believe. So,
and by that thinking, you would have thought that Ma Rainey's Black Bottom would have done better. In my opinion,
you're right. You're right. Last year was a bit of an outlier with that, because Hopkins and McDormand both won for roles that were not real people. So,
hey, it is what it is. But hey,
This year they really showed it, I think. The other thing I'll mention too is I know he kind of got played off stage was the director of Drive My Car, so it would have been nicer if they were a little nicer to him. I think that would have been better. I think the whole Troy Kotsur for Coda award thing, that all went really well. I think I was glad to see the windshield wiper one for best animated short, because while a lot of people thought Robin was going to win, which was not DreamWorks, but the people that do Wallace and Gromit. It was a short film they did for Netflix. I think people thought that was going to win just because it was popular,
Right.
So I was glad to see that one win. Let's see, Dune.
How about the fan voted awards, sir? You were really happy about.
Okay, we'll end on this, and then we'll go into our next topic.
Okay.
Oh God. Okay, so they did this fan voting thing. Now
I'm gaslighting.
And we talked about it during the Oscar episode. They made this for Spider-Man, is what everyone was thought. And I still think that was the intention, was that way Spider-Man would get an Oscar. Unfortunately, Snyder Bros have a way of taking over the internet, and it was allowed that Zack Snyder's Justice League, the Flash scene, which is a cool scene, don't get me wrong, was voted as best scene, and Army of the Dead was voted as best film, which I find it weird that Zack Snyder's Justice League wasn't voted as best film, since they both came out in 2021. And that one wasn't even top 5.
I would have assumed they would have done that just to spite Spider-Man and all the other successes Marvel had.
Only thing I can think of is maybe it wasn't eligible because technically it didn't play. I don't think that one played in any theaters, where Army of the Dead played in theaters for like a week or two, like they're doing with the Netflix movies now.
Gotcha.
So if they kept that same criteria, like you can't vote for a movie that was only home release. It was just it showed, and the Johnny Depp movie Minamata got in there as well. So it showed you that the internet trolls won this battle. They were able to make a mockery and a joke of the award, which a lot of people, when they announced it, thought that was what was going to happen. And lo and behold, that is what happened. It was made a mockery. Zack Snyder can now say he's a 2-time Oscar winner, I guess, even though I'm pretty sure they did it, Wayne, like a top 5 like they did, so that they didn't have to actually give out Oscars. So they're like, oh, we'll just list off the top 5 so you guys can see what people thought. The last thing I'll say about it, I'll let Wayne talk about it for a little bit. I find it interesting, too. I did not realize that the moment of the year, or whatever that was supposed to be, best fan moment, spanned the entire history of film. Because The Matrix Bullet Time was number 5, and Avengers Endgame was number 3. So that was confusing to me as well. Like, why wasn't it a 2021 thing? Now, the top 2 are 2021, being the Spider-Mans from Spider-Man No Way Home and then the Flash scene. But I didn't understand why they did that. I thought that was really dumb. And then also, so you're telling me the best scene of all time in film is fucking Flash from Zack Snyder's Justice League, which was never even actually in theaters?
When everybody knows it's when Ricky Vaughn re-embraces Wild Thing in Major League 2. Come on, we all know that's the greatest scene of all time.
I believe that's AFI's top Hollywood moment of all time.
There it is. And then something about a sled and a globe or something. I don't know. Rosebud. Or, when Jurassic World makes us all forget about the T-Rex and it comes and saves the fucking day.
Yes. That's a good moment as
well.
There's many moments I can think of.
Yeah, so, it just, not to dwell on this longer, but it's like, okay, so nothing good or epic ever happened within the first 110, 15 years. It's
basically 1999 and later is when film started. That's what that award shows you. Because when I first saw Matrix, when it popped up, I'm like, oh, they're gonna something from Matrix Resurrections, which just came out in 2020. That makes sense. And it was Bullet Time. I was like, oh, okay, so that's over 20 years old. Interesting. All right, so we're moving on. We're going to talk about an Oscar winner from a few years ago. Because we were going to talk Oscars, we're going to keep this a little shorter than we usually do when we talk about someone personally. Director Richard Linklater, who has a film that we will be reviewing today, But I wanted to kind of talk about just a couple of his movies that I really like. And I think, Wayne, you can get us started with 1993's Dazed and Confused.
All right. What can I say that I have not already said? Well, for me, this is nostalgia. This is one of my favorites. This is a go-to. Linklater wrote and directed this. I'm going to go with masterpiece. All right, you know what? If not masterpiece, national treasure. We have the coming of age story of the last day of high school in 1976, the bicentennial of the country, if you will. The story follows a group of kids that grew up in Texas, because I believe Linklater grew up in Texas.
He did, yes.
So I think this is semi-autobiographical, being that he was born in the 1960. It takes place in 1967, so right around that time where he was in high school. Just drop you the tagline really quick. The last day of school at high school in a small town in Texas, 1976. The upperclassmen are hazing the incoming freshmen, and everyone is trying to get stoned, drunk, laid. Even football players that have signed a pledge not to. Kind of anticlimactic there, but
it's not a very
basically the whole movie. It's basically captured. Everybody is, trying to get drunk, trying to get laid, trying to get stoned.
Imagine that tagline on a poster.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, fine. Maybe back then, I don't know. But yeah, it all basically centers around this party that gets busted, and they're moving it along. Gosh. All right. So
let's talk about that cast. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
I was going to say, let's talk about that cast. Right as you said starring, so he teed it up perfectly.
All right. We have Jason London, Wiley Wiggins, some guy named McConaughey in one of his first starring roles.
It is correct. One of his two starring roles. I'll talk about the other one in a minute here.
Rory Cochrane, Joey Lauren Adams, Mila Jovovich, Sean Adams, Adam Goldberg, Anthony Rapp, Sasha Jensen, Marissa Ribisi, Cole Hauser. Yes, that is right. The man, the myth, the legend from Yellowstone is in this movie. He is also in one of my other favorite movies of all time, Good Will Hunting. So.
Yes, as is Ben Affleck, who is also in this movie.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, Ben Affleck not listed in IMDb. Shame on them.
He's low. So. Yeah, if you open up the full cast list, he's lower down.
Yeah.
Parker Posey.
Epic soundtrack. Like, the start of the movie is... and of course, I'm drawing the biggest brain cramp of all time, Sweet Emotions by Aerosmith.
Yes.
And if you've watched the behind-the-scenes documentary, like I have several times, they blew a good portion of the production budget just licensing this song for the title track.
Well, it's good because they didn't really have to pay anybody because none of these people were stars at the time. You also had Renee Zellweger, too, who was basically a blink and you miss it role in this movie. Her and Matthew McConaughey, of course, around the same time, around the same year, starred in Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation, a movie at the time that they would like to have forgotten. I think McConaughey has kind of embraced it a bit more over this time, but he got both of those roles right around the same time, and they were both like, he showed up to do I think for Dazed and Confused, it was I watched an interview clip recently. He was doing the modeling, and someone from the movie was like, "Hey, I think you got like the right look. You should meet with Richard." And then he met Linklater, and the rest is history. Basically, after that, and I want to say he said he blew it first, and then he kind of took a second to get back to get to the character, and then he walked in the room, kind of like Sean Penn for Fast Times. Very similar. Didn't kind of understand it at first, and then when he got it, and that was the rest is history.
Because this was originally supposed to be a 1 or 2 scene character, and it just kept expanding and expanding.
Yeah, McConaughey talks about how they kept bringing him in for more scenes.
Yeah. In 2013, this film was inducted into the Texas Film Hall of Fame. Just so
Yes.
a very prestigious award, of course.
What I love about this film, Wayne, and watching his new movie and thinking about some of his other movies, what I think is great about Dazed and Confused is you talked about it. It's like a nostalgia factor for it was a nostalgia movie, but he made it for people his age, for people that grew up in the 70s. But it works as a nostalgia film for us who grew up in the 80s and 90s because it's a total 90s film, just that takes place in 1976. Yep. So I think it's interesting that you kind of have two generations that look at this movie very similarly as something from their past. One is like it's bringing up stuff from their past, and ours is remembering this movie and when it came out and the impact that all right has had on our society is incredible. And the fact that this movie is part of our growing up, but harkens back to a time before we were even alive. So it always kind of just blows my mind that you could have a movie reach two separate audiences for two different reasons, really.
Yeah, I always connected with Linklater and this film particularly because he and my father were born in the same month of the same year, and with this film, Matthew McConaughey really looked like my father did back in his time. Like they resembled each other. Sorry, Dad, you weren't quite Matthew McConaughey, but similar with the blonde hair and the hairstyle, and yeah.
Gotcha.
I don't know. It's just one of those weird things. Like, okay, multiple levels. So,
well, I think too he does a lot of coming of age stories, and I think as we've talked about many a times, that's something that we all can relate to. So I think that's another reason why I've been such a huge fan of his, because even when he does something like School of Rock, which is more, I wouldn't necessarily call it a coming of age film, but it has a lot of those same elements to it. So just so people know, big film buffs, we're going to skip over the Before Sunrise because, yes, as a big film buff, I have yet to watch those movies. The new ones are coming out, and I'm like, I haven't seen the first one yet, so I'm not going to watch the new one. So I haven't watched that trilogy yet. He did Suburbia in 1996, was basically his 90s version of Dazed and Confused. I do recommend it. It's kind of lesser known, but if you haven't seen it, it is out there. I was a big fan of that movie before I even knew, like I watched Dazed and Confused and then I watched Suburbia. I had no idea they were directed by the same person until I got, started working at Blockbuster years later. He did do one in 2001 that it fits with what we're going to talk about today, and that's Waking Life. It was his first rotoscope movie, where rotoscoping is when you take actors, they act, and then you color them over into animation. I did not like Waking Life that much. It starred Wiley Wiggins from Dazed and Confused. It just didn't do a lot for me. But the one we're going to talk about, and then A Scanner Darkly, really, I thought, kind of pushed that envelope with that style of filmmaking. But I think his next big movie, that we have to talk about, as I already mentioned, School of Rock, Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
This, Jack Black was already working, and he was a comedian, and Tenacious D was already a thing. They had their failed show on HBO. But School of Rock is that movie that catapulted him to, I think, superstardom for that time frame, and led to him having such a great career at that moment in, from 2003 to like 2010, 11. Not that he doesn't have a great career now, but he's not doing as many movies as he used to. Written by Mike White, directed by Richard Linklater, starring Jack Black, Mike White, Joan Cusack, Adam Pascal, and then a bunch of the kids and stuff have gone on to be like musicians. Sarah Silverman was in it, as well as the real Ned Schneebly's girlfriend. She's always really funny. I like when Sarah Silverman pops up in a movie. So Jack Black, kind of like he's a musician who gets fired from his band. He's the lead singer, and he doesn't know what to do. And his roommate is, I believe he's sick that day, right? So he ends up taking the substitute job, pretending to be him.
Yes.
And then ends up basically getting like a full-time position there for the rest of the year. That'll happen sometimes with substitutes, is like they'll end up having to take on the rest of the year. And he ends up like forming his own new rock band with these kids. And obviously at first his intentions are very selfish and very one-sided. But he ends up bringing out a lot of the creativity and the personalities of these kids, and they form, they do a battle of the bands and stuff like that. So it's a very kind of cute kid movie, but also just a really fun, like I said, kind of coming of age story. And it works on so many levels. It's one of those movies. It's instantly watchable. If you see it on TV, you can stop and watch it no matter where you are. I've just always really enjoyed this film. Wayne, what are your thoughts on School of Rock?
Just going through like School of Rock and seeing Jack Black right there. He's definitely somebody we need to do a deep dive on.
Yes, for sure.
Because I'm going through all this. But School of Rock specifically, just incredibly creative, and like just so many like little one like, you know what, no, like that whole thing. Like I used to quote all the time, and obviously channeling AC/DC and Angus Young in his little schoolboy outfit.
Yeah.
It's like
it works perfectly. It's so good. Yeah. I'm just scrolling through. There's a couple movies that I didn't even know he did Where'd You Go, Bernadette with Kate Blanchett from a couple years ago. So I have to watch. A couple movies of his I'm still going to have to watch that I haven't seen. That's the other thing with him too, is his career has been so varied for Linklater. He's been kind of just hasn't stayed in one genre really. He's come back to, and done something similar in certain respects. But he kind of keeps floating around. The one thing missing, Mr. Linklater, if you're listening, is a horror film. So maybe get on that, because I think that could be very interesting from you.
I think Jack Black would be epic in a horror film. So
of course, yes, he would. He did the Bad News Bears remake, which I don't hate. A lot of people dislike. I thought was actually decent. I haven't seen Fast Food Nation. He did a Scanner Darkly, which I really liked. Me and Orson Welles, I heard wasn't great. Bernie with Jack Black and Matthew McConaughey. I actually like. I have
passed over this so many times that I didn't realize that he did it. So that's obviously going to be on my list.
Yeah,
it's right after I watch Dazed and Confused when we're done with this show.
The other I'm only I got two more here that I really wanted to touch on, but I think the one that we have to talk about is the one that he won the Oscar for, and that is Boyhood.
Yeah,
Boyhood. At the time that it came out, people wanted to talk negatively about it because they looked at it as a gimmick movie, because he shot it over 12 years. That way he could cast the younger kids and come back, and they would just, you come back once a year for 12 years and shoot for like 4 weeks and then get like the whole story together, because it takes place over 12 years. Really, honestly, a really cool idea. And I at first I was skeptical when I heard that's what he was doing. And I'm like, what's this movie going to be? Movie was incredible. I really loved it.
It made me itchy when I was just hearing about it. I'm like, oh God, so much can go wrong.
Right, exactly. Well, you got to worry about people dying. I mean, that
was my biggest thing.
Now it's a coming of age story, so that could easily, I guess, be written into it. But it's like one of those things you're just kind of concerned about when you're thinking of like, how are you going to make a movie for 12 years, man? Eller Coltrane was the star of it. He was the main kid. Patricia Arquette won her Oscar for that role. It was Olivia, the mom. Ethan Hawke credited only as dad. He was great, I thought. He was also nominated. Lorelei Linklater played the daughter.
Who would have thunk it that she has the same last name as the director?
Yeah, I know, right? People will get like nepotism. In this particular case, for this particular movie, I feel like that was done on purpose, because it's hard probably to get one family to agree to get your kid to come back once a year for 12 years to film. When it's your own kid, you could at least be like, hey, you're going to do this for us. All right, we'll pay you.
Or you're grounded.
Yeah, or you're grounded, basically. Not that I'm implying that Richard Linklater threatened his daughter, but I'm just saying it seems a bit easier to get through that. It's a long movie. It's like 3 hours, but it covers like 10 years or 12 years of this kid's life, where you get to see him grow from a child to an adult. It's a really interesting way to shoot a movie. I kind of kick myself for questioning it, because Linklater, when you look at his repertoire, his resume, if you will, he's got a lot of great stuff on there. So why anyone would think that he couldn't do it? He's just really great. And I think this movie showed like how deep he could go. So Wayne, what were your initial thoughts when you first saw Boyhood?
Gosh, it's been I think I saw it in 2014 and I haven't seen it since. So,
yeah.
My memories of it were minimal, unfortunately. I've added it to my watch list on IMDb, so I'm going to get to that as soon as I can. I just remember Ethan Hawke's and Patricia Arquette more than anything else, obviously, because as Eli Coltrane, as he grows, the acting gets better.
Yes,
Better.
he's a bit rough
Quote,
early
air
on.
quotes.
Yeah.
But like just the whole like idea and premise of the film was really inspiring. And like I said, it's like, oh my gosh, so much could go wrong, and it didn't. It came together really well, really well. Again, I wish I could say more about it, but I just don't.
That's fine. Yeah, I mean it and that one too. That one's definitely always like on something, whether it be IMDb or Vudu or Tubi. I always see it playing somewhere for free. So definitely check that out. I won't go into great detail on, but I definitely recommend Everybody Wants Some, which is basically like a spiritual sequel to Dazed and Confused. It's a college athlete and his baseball team. Wyatt Russell is also in it. It has a really great young cast. It takes place in 1981, I think. So it's kind of like the similar type of thing, like how it was growing up in the 80s for, I'm sure, someone like Linklater as he was coming of age. That's why these movies, including I think the one we're gonna talk about today, he kind of puts himself into these films. Even though the one today is a little bit more fictional, at least so we believe. I guess maybe we don't know the true story. So yeah, that's all we're gonna say about him. He's got an Untitled Bill Hicks biopic in the works, Untitled John Brinkley biopic in the works, and then Merrily We Roll Along is his next one that has any sort of poster or anything, and that'll be Beanie Feldstein and Ben Platt. So I'll be interested to see what he's got for us in the future. Also, didn't realize that he's like 62 years old. I was like, when I saw that, I was like, holy shit. He just doesn't, he's always kind of looked like an Ivan Reitman. He's always looked young, I guess. So like to see him old is like, oh, he still kind of looks young. So good genes. All right. So we're ready for our next segment, which is our reviews
of the week.
Never fails, Win. All right. So many people may not know, but on Friday, Netflix released two films from two big Hollywood directors, one from Richard Linklater and one from Judd Apatow. Netflix doesn't like to advertise a lot of stuff lately, and so I think a lot of people, it may have gone unnoticed. The first one up that we have is, let me get the full title here because it's a mouthful, Apollo 10.5, A Space Age Childhood. It's PG-13. It's directed by Richard Linklater. It is also written by Richard Linklater. I would say it kind of, you could say similar to Dazed and Confused. It probably mirrors a little bit of his own past, his upbringing, as he's the youngest kid in his family, I believe, and that's what this character is. And it takes place in 1969 during the moon landing, something that he would have experienced. But it comes up with this idea that everybody in that town that works in that town and lives in that town that he lives in works at NASA. And there's these two agents played by Zachary Levi, and let me get the other actor because he's also really good. Glenn Powell, who is in Everybody Wants Some. They play these two, like, I guess, like Secret Service or NASA agents or whatever, and they come to the playground in the beginning of the movie to the young character Stan, and they say, "Hey Stan, NASA needs your help. Instead of sending a monkey in the outer space, we have a rocket. We want to send a kid." And
Dear Slim, I wrote you, but you still ain't calling. I left my cell, my pager, and my home phone at the bottom.
There's a little bit of Wayne's Eminem voice for Stan, obviously. So they basically tell Stan that they're going to send him into outer space so they can make sure it's safe for Neil Armstrong and the actual astronauts. So it's this idea that instead of sending a monkey or an animal into space to test it, they send a child, and the rocket, they call it 10.5 because it's they've accidentally built the rocket smaller, I think is what their explanation is. So they need someone tiny to go in. So it has a very, I saw someone's count in a review say Wonder Years. and it has a very kind of Wonder Years vibe to it. As Jack Black is the narrator, and he's throughout the entire film. He carries it essentially. It is rotoscoped, which means that the actors acted, but then they were colored over in animation, so it's technically an animated film. But it is not a kids' film. I would say. I mean, not that kids can't watch it. It's PG-13, so teenagers.
I loved this because it was borderline documentary, borderline, fantasy story, and
yes,
I just think it was a fantastic job. And, at the beginning, I'm like, do they really have a kid test with NASA? Like, wait, what?
It's so believable.
His dad works for NASA, so I guess it's possible that they could come into like some basic stuff, and then I'm like, oh wait, never mind.
The way they intercut between him like falling asleep during the actual launch, and then all the stuff that he had to go through before they did the launch, I thought was really clever. Like you said, it felt very much like documentary style on one end, but then fictional on the other end as they kept cutting back. They would actually cut to the actual TV personalities that called the moon landing, and then they would cut back to Levi and Zachary Levi and Glenn Powell's characters, basically walking Stan through all the whole process as he's in outer space, being the first person to actually land on the moon, which I thought was really cool. Kind of jumping around, and it was a really interesting film. I'd say it was something I wasn't necessarily expecting, but I wasn't surprised that it came from Linklater. His last two rotoscope films, like A Scanner Darkly and this one, I've liked a lot more than Waking Life, because I feel like Waking Life he was testing to see if it was going to work. And while I didn't love that movie, I think he got the idea. Okay, well this works, but let's try telling with A Scanner Darkly an actual sci-fi adaptation and see how people dig it. And then something like this is more personal too. This is obviously it's fictional, but it's a more personal fictional story. And I think the rotoscoping, it worked because it does allow you to do certain things and make them look realistic without having to rely on crazy special effects. So it was a very smart way to make this movie. Everybody I thought was really good in it. The kids were all really good. Jack Black's narration was, it was really good, but there were points where I'm like, oh, it's Jack Black. But it was. Yeah.
That was my thing. When he started talking, I'm like, yes. I was waiting for just Jack Blackisms, and I'm like, it didn't happen, but it's like, Jack Black.
I guess, and that's what it is. I think I'm never used to him talking for that long without breaking into any of those moments. He did, up his volume level every once in a while, where you would start to feel like he was getting into the Jack Black mode. But he keeps it in check for the most part. A very reserved narration performance, if you will. I mean, I really, there really isn't anything bad to say about this movie. I don't think it really hits a lot of the right moments. And like I said, I was kind of a surprise. I didn't expect it to even come out this year, so I didn't know about it at all.
Just the way they broke it down and kind of gave you a documentary style, what it was like growing up in Texas in the 60s and talking about Astro World and the Astrodome and AstroTurf and just how everything was built around space and this, that, and the other thing. I really, really got into that. I really connected with it. And then obviously, it subtly just kind of hints at the fantasy aspect of this 10-year-old boy who's experiencing one of the greatest moments in space history, I guess, and the whole, talking about the Cold War and ducking and covering. And I remember ducking and covering under my desk thinking, this really isn't going to do much about being burned alive or radiation poisoning.
Right, yeah.
It's like, as a 10-year-old, I get it, but do it anyway.
I mean, it's a very interesting film. I think it deserves to be seen. I don't think this will be the last time we hear about it. I'm going to assume, unless 5 other great animated films come out between now and the end of the year, this will probably be in talks for Best Animated Feature going into next year's Oscars.
This is your winner right here, calling it now.
That would be nice. Unfortunately, I think Disney has movies coming out that usually hampers the chance of anybody else winning.
I got your Encanto right here.
I mean, so I really dig this movie. I mean, it's really good. I would give it a solid 8.5 out of 10. Wayne, where are you at with it?
I was going 9. I loved this. I cannot wait to watch it again.
Yeah, really good film. Definitely Linklater he still has it. That's what you look at in a movie like this, where some of his other ones, he didn't write, so they're not as personable. This one you can tell was very personal to him.
Yeah.
And it was just a great story to kind of dive into. And like I said, it was unexpected. So it's always nice to kind of get these treats, especially with streaming, where you're like, oh crap, there's something from Linklater coming out. All right. So next we have another one from a top director being reviewed as probably his worst reviewed movie so far in his career. He's usually pretty solid. It's The Bubble. The Bubble with Karen Gillan is the lead. You have a great supporting cast all the way through. Everybody is pretty much somebody that you know. It's directed, as I said before, at the head by Judd Apatow. So it's a comedy. It's a drama at times. It's crazy at times. It kind of gets insane. Wayne, it reminded me, because it's getting really bad reviews. So it reminded me of, because I actually enjoyed it. It's not a great movie. There's a lot of things wrong with it. But entertainment value wise, I had a really good time with it.
I don't understand how everybody is missing the satirical aspect of this.
Yes. Yeah.
Stop taking this seriously, guys.
It reminds me of like Death to Smoochie. And Death to Smoochie, if you remember when it came out, was critically hated by people. And has slowly kind of built this fan base of people who love it for being as dark and weird as it is. And I think The Bubble follows somewhat in that suit, because just the moments that you have, it's like a bunch of vignettes in the pandemic. That's where this movie takes place. It's about how they're one of two movies shooting in the pandemic, and all the actors are going insane, basically, very slowly. And they kind of build to that. And you have, let me go through the cast here real quick. Karen Gillan, Rob Delaney, Fred Armisen, Guz Khan, Maria Bakalova from the Borat movie, Veer Das, Leslie Mann, of course, Iris Apatow, Pedro Pascal, Keegan-Michael Key, David Duchovny, Kate McKinnon. There's other Maria Bamford. There's other cameos throughout. Daisy Ridley has a cameo. John Lithgow, John Cena, which comes in late in the game.
Yes, that was a great scene, though.
It was. One of my favorites, and this will kind of spoil it. I don't want to. I'm just going to say it, and Wayne will know I'm talking. James McAvoy. that whole scene that he has towards the end of the movie. So
take a break, Professor X.
Yeah.
And the damn Mandalorian has lost his mind.
He takes his hand up to his ear like it's a phone. He's just like, oh, sorry, I gotta take. It's not even a phone.
I will give credit where credit is due. Daisy Ridley made me laugh a lot.
She was. I don't know why I'm here.
Yep. Pretty solid in American accent too.
Oh yeah, no, it was good. She was good. There's a part in this movie where like it's slowly getting insane. That's what's happening in this movie. It's building. So it's like you have the 14-day quarantine when Karen Gillan's character gets to set, and then you have everybody kind of nutty on set, and then they have to do another quarantine. So then everybody gets even crazier. Then there's this huge drug scene, which that's when the movie like really goes off the rails in a good way. I really enjoyed it from that point. Like it was, like I said, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to tell you, it's not. Is it a good movie? But it's fucking fun as hell, man. I had a good time.
I laughed a lot. Like I don't understand why people are giving it like 1s and 2s and 3s. It's like I was like
Yeah, and it boggles my mind that it was on IMDb of all places. It has like a 4.9 because every shitty Adam Sandler movie holds at least above a 5. So when I see that, I always wonder like there's something behind it. Is it Judd Apatow hate? Is it hate for his wife? Is it whatever it is? There's always seems to be a reason for it. So I'm not sure why it's that low. But I think the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes is pretty high. So that's a good parameter. It's really funny. If you want to see a good comedy with a great cast who kind of goes balls out. I love too Keegan-Michael Key where they mention how he's a terrible actor, and then when they do the movie stuff, he's got the "What are we gonna do here, guys?" Like he's putting on this terrible voice to like accentuate like how bad he actually is at acting. I love the little TikTok dances throughout the movie too. I thought those were cute and fun
with the dinosaur.
Yeah, oh my god, that was really good too.
I love their little wings; they're so cute. But I gotta say, Guz Khan's exit.
So good.
I think it was my favorite part. Fuck, you're done.
No, I know I went all crazy on you, but can I come back for the next one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was really it was enjoyable. It was like obviously you could tell we had a good time with it. Obviously, as you could see the reviews, not everyone's going to have a good time with this movie, and that's okay. I would say I'm 7 out of 10. Wayne, is that too high? 7 out of 10, I think feels pretty good.
I was like 5.5, 6, where it was funny, but overall as a movie, no. But I mean, I do love Karen Gillan very much.
Yes, so, and I did notice too.
I'll go with 6 just because
sounds more positive.
It does, and
it's at least a D. 5.5 is a failing grade. No, I think it was interesting too because it has such a huge all-star cast that Karen Gillan obviously was brought onto this project with her being the lead in mind. Because if you notice, it's her name first at the end credits, and then it's everybody else alphabetically. Or Judd just did that to put Iris second because she obviously got second billing because her name is Apatow. So, yeah, it was. I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. It's not perfect. But I do think it's going to be one of those movies that people are talking about down the road of like, have you seen how crazy this fucking movie is? And I respect that. So you can catch both The Bubble and Apollo 10.5 on Netflix right now. They're both Netflix originals, so they'll be there forever unless they sell them off like they did with the Marvel shows, which are now on Disney+. I digress. All right, so last week I talked about watching a movie from old actors, and Wayne gave me Errol Morris as a
Errol Flynn.
Errol Flynn.
That's why he couldn't find any of his films.
Well, Errol Morris I think he's a documentary filmmaker. So Errol Flynn, I watched The Adventures of Robin Hood. I surprisingly, Wayne, like you gave me a guy. I had to go find this. I couldn't just go to like a streaming service. I had to find it somewhere. I found.
You have to understand when you challenge Mr. Kirkpatrick to a film. Watching that, you gotta dig deep because the man is a walking encyclopedia.
Well, I haven't seen I've seen obviously like a lot of the classic old movies, like your Casablancas and obviously Citizen Kane and Wizard of Oz and stuff like that. But and this isn't to blame my parents. They'll hear this and be like, "Oh, you're blaming us for not." My dad was very famous for watching a movie and never watching it again. So, and he still does that to this day. So that didn't really allow for a lot of rewatches, So I basically kind of had to discover a lot of the stuff that I like on my own, and I just never really gravitated towards the really old stuff. So when I watched 1938's Adventures of Robin Hood with Errol Flynn and the guy from Claude Rains from The Invisible Man. So I knew a couple people in this movie. And one of the girl is from who just passed away recently. She's from Gone with the Wind. It was good. It's a good movie. It's unfortunate that I've seen other Robin Hoods since because it's basically the same story. But it's really well told. Errol Flynn is very good in the movie. I liked the character Little John and
what?
Not that
you knew that was coming. I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course. Will Scarlet. I still prefer the Christian Slater Will Scarlet, but that's just.
Of course.
And it does get points deducted, even though he wasn't alive yet. No Bryan Adams.
What about no Alan Rickman? Come on.
No Alan Rickman.
And to make the stitches small.
No Morgan Freeman. But no, it was
God, star-studded. I forgot Morgan Freeman.
Prince of Peace.
Shame on me. I forgot about. I can't do Morgan Freeman. One of the impressions I've always wanted to do, and I can't do it.
It just sounded very Southern hillbilly. He's got a little bit of that twang in there, though. Yeah, it's a good movie. It was really fun to watch. I'm sticking with like a person a month, so I'm gonna pick another Errol Flynn movie. There is one on HBO, I think, called Captain Blood, I believe. So I'll probably watch that one at some point. But yeah, so other than that, I honestly didn't watch a lot this week. I took Donovan to go see Morbius yesterday, which that's another movie that's getting terrible, terrible reviews.
I was
It's
gonna
got
say, is it as bad as people are rating it?
I don't think so. I think we've gone beyond movies like Blade and the early X-Men movies. It's very much in that, like you could tell the director Espinosa was like, oh man, I really loved Blade. And it has a lot of that same tone to it. It's very dark. Obviously, it's about vampires. I thought it was fine. Jared Leto gives a nice performance. The movie itself was entertaining. I really liked the character of Morbius. I'm not a huge fan of like the end credit scenes. They're okay. I'm interested to see where this goes for Sony in the future because obviously they're setting up their own Spider-Verse. That's what's happening with this. There may never be a Morbius 2. We will probably see Jared Leto return, though, in a separate movie, whether it be a Sinister Six or another Spider-Man movie.
I hope he does another movie.
Yes.
Jared Leto. I hope he's in more films. See what I did there?
Is he not in enough movies for you?
He's been in one or two.
Me and my wife, we watched the Chinese disaster film Skyfire, which you can catch on Hulu. It was decent. I told Donovan's like, how was it? I'm like, it's really dumb, but it was a lot of fun. It's from the director of Con Air, so like, temper your expectations. It's very silly, but it's an entertaining film.
Now you bring up Con Air. Is there a mullet in this movie?
There isn't. It would have been better if Nick, because Jason Isaacs actually plays the lone American in the film, or not American, but the lone English speaking character.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been nice if it was Nick Cage with a mullet.
Outstanding. I personally think Nick Cage needs to do a Con Air 2 with the mullet in a tank top right now in the shape that he is in.
I would go see that in a heartbeat.
Absolutely. He still hadn't put the bunny in the box.
Years later. All he'd do was put the bunny in the box. I watched Spookies and Sledgehammer, which are two B horror films through Joe Bob. So if you like that kind of stuff, they're goofy. Sledgehammer was the first movie released on VHS, like shot on VHS, that was released in 1983. That was when people were like, oh wait, you can shoot on this too? And lots of shitty movies were made since then. Rewatched Black Widow, still really like that movie. And then last night I watched Prisoner, what was it? Female Prisoner 701, which is a
easy with that. It's a family show, sir.
Movie it is. It's, if you enjoyed watching prison films from the 70s or 80s, it was Japanese. Yeah. It was the Japanese version of that. So if you like women in prison films, basically.
Hey, I've already warned you twice. I'm done now. The joke is dead.
Those are on Shudder right now. That was the first one. There's 3 more. Haunting of Bly Manor I watched recently. I really liked it. Different than Haunting of Hill House. Much more emotional, much more about like romance, which is interesting. Really, it takes a couple episodes to really get into it, unlike Hill House, which got into it right away. But I recommend if you've started watching Bly Manor, you're like, I don't know, stick with it. It really hits you at the end. Very good cast, too. And then The Missing, which was from 2014 on Starz. We watched it on Amazon Prime. It's about a girl or a boy that goes missing, and then the parents trying to find him over 8 years. Kind of depressing. Yeah, so Wayne, what have you watched this week that you want to talk about?
I am still making my way through The Walking Dead. Other than that, I had company in town, so I did not watch a lot of things.
All right.
So it was a shallow week for my viewing.
You're so shallow.
Indeed.
You're caught in the shallow, I think. And that's how that goes. That's what Lady Gaga said.
Tell me something, girl.
Wait, am I the girl in this situation? All right. Off the rails. At some point, it's going to go off the rails. It just happens. All right. So let's get into the news and notes of the week. News: Welcome to Derry. It prequel series in the works at HBO. Robert Rodriguez brings Spy Kids back via Netflix. Gillian Anderson signs first look deal with Netflix, which means anything that she comes up with, the people that know what first look means, she has to take it to Netflix first, and then if they pass, then she could take it elsewhere.
Speaking of just that and Netflix, how about we didn't talk about Duchovny at all in our review of the
In the
bubble
bubble?
there?
We really did. We kind of brushed over him. Yeah, I thought he was pretty solid in it. I liked him in it.
I would be all about an X-Files revival again with better writing. I think that would be fantastic. And I think she mentioned that in her I don't want to say list of demands, but reasons why she would consider. I'm just like, let's go, come on,
get it going. I would do that, especially at Netflix. That would be insane. My wife is a huge X-Files fan, so that would go over very well here.
And then let's get Duchovny to do some more Californication.
Yes, that's it. It was. I feel like I haven't seen him in a long time, so we didn't talk about him a lot during our review. It was nice to see Duchovny in something that was, with a big cast, and being funny, because he's really good at being funny, but he doesn't always get the chance to do that. Gillian Anderson signed, or no, I already talked about that, so I'll cut that part out. Daniel Kaluuya will write dystopian film The Kitchen for Netflix. Some sad news: Bruce Willis retiring due to the aphasia that he has developed over the years. May be tied to his memory loss, which I think I had mentioned before, that's why he had been doing so many movies lately, was he knew, there was going to be a time where he couldn't act anymore. A lot of love and outpouring coming out for him this week. Some of it seeming like he died, but he didn't die. He's still alive. He's just retiring because he has to. For those of you that don't know, aphasia, it basically is a disease that makes you not be able to verbalize your thoughts anymore, and therefore you can't speak. So obviously very hard to act. Wayne, your thoughts on Bruce Willis and his career here?
Well, I for one have been critical of him in his acting roles and just how he has
his choices lately
been on sets toward people, and this could very well have played into that. So we like to point out when we make mistakes and when we're wrong, and that is one of the times I'm going to do that right now. And I'm not saying this is definitely the case as to why, but just taking everything into account. I'm sorry for the things that I have criticized Bruce Willis for over the years recently. So
I'll say go ahead. Sorry.
Just hopefully he will have a great retirement and live a continued long existence with his family.
I also say I'm sorry for any of the recent comments I made. However, Death Wish still sucked.
Some things you can't help.
Let's see. James Wan adapting Stinger novel for Peacock. It will be called Teacup. The Rookie renewed for season 5 at ABC. The Good Doctor also renewed for season 6 at ABC. Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson re-team for Project Artemis, directed by Jason Bateman. So 3 people I'm very interested in there, watching their movies. Action film Best Man will star Dolph Lundgren, Luke Wilson, and Scout Taylor Compton. Eddie Murphy rumored to be playing George Clinton from the Parliament Funkadelic in a documentary film, or not a documentary film, a biopic film. Rumor that DCEU is building to Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline, similar to Civil War in the Marvel Universe. The Crisis on Infinite Earth is a huge storyline in DC Universe. The DCEU is not necessarily what it once was, since Justice League failed, but Flash and Aquaman and Wonder Woman are still around. So with Flash, they're bringing back Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck. So it'll be interesting to see where all that goes and heads.
For the love of God, somebody make me a badass, kick-ass Superman movie that doesn't take place on Earth and earthly enemies.
That could be a good way to bring Cavill back too, as well. That could be his movie to come back in, which I would be okay with that. Yes. Catherine Bigelow directing Aurora for Netflix. Bill Skarsgård playing the Crow in new adaptation. I wasn't sure if this was true or not because it was announced on April 1st, but people haven't stopped talking about it, so I'm going to assume at this point that it is official. Now, adaptations of The Crow since the first film have been cursed. Even the first one, obviously, as people know, Brandon Lee passed away. They've all fallen apart. Bradley Cooper to Jason Momoa. to Tom Hiddleston have all been involved, and all those projects are dead. This is a new project. One last thing, and we talked about the Oscars at the beginning. Will Smith has resigned from the Academy, which means that he will no longer be allowed to vote, which, I guess is a step in the right direction for him. Some of his movies were delayed, and people were like, well, they didn't delay this person's movies. I have a feeling that the reason Will Smith's movies were delayed is because Will Smith is going to take some time away to look inward, which is something that, I hope he does, and I hope he comes back strong. We here at the podcast, we like Will Smith. We like his performances. We're still going to watch his movies. But seeing someone that you like have a flippant moment like that, that's not normal. If Wayne and I were at we've had Monster Jam award ceremonies. If we were in an award ceremony and someone made a joke about us and we got up and slapped them on stage, we would have been fired. Maybe not arrested, but we would have been fired. So there are going to be repercussions for things like this. I understand that that's not how it's always worked in Hollywood. I think a lot of what's going on is they are doing overcorrecting because they were a lot more lenient in the past. Not in the so far back past. So hopefully it's a step in the right direction. And again, there's no ill will towards Will Smith. It maybe makes me look at him a little different. But like he cares what I think. So I'm sure he'll continue to live his life, and him and his wife can go on and continue to fuck other people.
I cannot wait for Chris Rock to go on tour because he's going to have a huge audience.
He will. Yeah. Oh yeah. And that, like, all his concerts sold out immediately after all this happened. So I'm glad that at least he'll kind of get to still perform and nothing will be taken away from him. And then obviously it will be part of his act at some point too. So he's already said as much that he will talk about it at some point. Now it's just too soon. All right. So release is coming up. The Sea Beast animated film from Moana and Big Hero 6 team hits Netflix July 8th. And Game of Thrones House of the Dragons debuts August 21st on HBO and HBO Max. Deaths this week: Jeff Carson, country singer, dead at 58. Gary Leach, comic book artist, dead at 67. Paul Herman, Sopranos, Goodfellas, Silver Linings Playbook, dead at 76. And Estelle Harris from Seinfeld played George's mom. She has passed away. Or was it George? Yeah, it was George's mom, right? Yeah. And she was 93. So rest in peace to all of them. So we hope you guys enjoyed the conversation this week. We appreciate you all listening. Wayne, any final thoughts to the audience?
As we are wrapping up our 90th show, just thanks again for listening and downloading and being there to hear what we have to say.
And wanting to listen to it for 90 episodes. I haven't got my wife to listen to one of these yet, so she claims, well, I hear them all the time. Because
in her defense, Miranda hasn't listened either, but she has listened to every single one of them.
I'm in the closet and she is right out there, so she could probably hear every word I'm saying.
It's almost like you can feel when they're rolling their eyes at us.
Well, there was one episode where I talked about the movies that that we watched, whether she liked them or not, and when I got done with it, she's like, "Stop talking about me." I'm sorry. So anyway, we appreciate you guys listening, and as always, thank you for listening to Now Showing with Mike and Wayne.
Ronald Reagan, the actor?
Hasta la vista, baby.
Hey, everybody, we're all gonna get laid.